This is in great analysis by Michael D. Weiss, an American journalist, author, and news commentator about the war in Ukraine. After hearing this, many aspects of the negotiations for Ukraine will become clearer. This is an excellent and timely fact sheet on Ukraine, U.S. vs. European security assistance, and other misunderstood or lied about aspects of the war by our friends at the Study of War. I'll summarize a few main points below, with additional sources of my own. Russia's advances have slowed considerably in the last few months. It was taking, on average, 28 square kilometers per day in November. It took 16 square kilometers in January. Why is this? Russians are suffering severe manpower and equipment losses, and Ukraine is causing them greater pain with its fleet of domestically sourced FPV drones, which now include fiber optic wire-guided drones to evade electronic warfare. Drones increasingly compensate for artillery shortages on the Ukrainian side. Such is the state of Russia's army. Its soldiers are now using donkeys to transport ammunition to the front lines. Of course, Russia still has its own formidable capabilities and advantages on the battlefield, especially in glide bombs and drones. It, too, deploys fiber-optic wire-guided FPVs. But, as Jack Watling, one of the best military analysts of the war, has noted, the Russian military is massively underperforming, largely because of the poor quality of its third big advantage infantry and a lack of lower-level command and control. It is one thing to devastate Ukrainian positions with bombs and drones. It is another to exploit that devastation by capturing and holding evacuated terrain. At the current pace of advance, as per ISW, it would take Russia 83 years to capture the remaining 80% of Ukraine it does not occupy. I doubt even Donald Trump will be president in 83 years, although Elon Musk's follicular unit transplants may well become self-aware by then, in which case we're all fucked anyway. As for dictatorial theater kid Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine cannot hold elections under martial law as a matter of constitutionality. The main rivals to Zelensky in any hypothetical contest include former commander-in-chief, and now Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, Valery Zaluzhny, and former President Petro Poroshenko. They affirm this fact. Now perhaps Viktor Medvedchuk or whomever the Kremlin has in mind to run as their preferred candidate for president does not care, but this is a sovereign Ukrainian matter. It is not up to the United States or Russia or South African oligarchs to decide. Europe, which will be tasked with sustaining most, if not all, of Ukraine's security assistance if the US cuts and runs, already spends more than the US does on Ukraine. ISW. Europe has provided and pledged approximately $204.1 billion in all. Over $174 billion from the EU, $13.9 billion from Norway, and $16.2 billion from the UK, compared to America's $183 billion. On the matter of what the US spends, SW. The majority of the funds the United States has allocated for Ukraine stays in the United States to fund domestic defense industrial base and replenish US stockpiles. Indeed. The best analysis of where US taxpayer money is going and not going has been conducted by AEI, not quite what you would call a bastion of liberal Democratic Party agitprop. Most of the money gets spent at home creating new arsenals for the US military to compensate for the aged or expired but still viable stockpiles of kit donated to Ukraine, building weapons factories and employing thousands of American workers. In other words, Donald Trump's wholly imaginary claim that half of what the US has spent on Ukraine since the full-scale invasion has been stolen would, if true, mean that the real den of thieves was operating right here in the United States. Regarding actual Ukrainian corruption, this is a problem no one in Ukraine denies, and everyone talks about almost as much as they do the war. Much of what we know and what gets reported about Ukrainian corruption in the international press is the spade work of Ukrainian civil society groups and law enforcement bodies. Case in point, Ukraine's intelligence agency said it had exposed a defense company's $40 million embezzlement scheme, money that had been intended to procure mortar rounds. One might even argue that the exigencies of a war for national survival have accelerated efforts at weeding out, or at least anathematizing, corruption. Stealing what is needed at the front is treason, not just fraud. So have the requirements for Ukraine's candidature to join the European Union. As for America's own Ukraine oversight protocols, there exists an entire section of the U.S. Government Accountability Office dedicated to Ukraine oversight. All its reports are publicly available until DOJ discovers this bureaucracy exists, and a 19-year-old Forshan incel decides its staff should be fired. Let's say, however, that you mistrust the deep state globalist Gorgon's capacity or willingness to tell the truth about Ukraine aid. Fear not, private enterprise is here to help. International accounting firms are contracted to audit where Ukraine aid money goes. PricewaterhouseCoopers, for instance, reviews how the Ukrainian government compiles its regular expenditure reports to the World Bank, information shared with the relevant U.S. project donors. As it stands, there are very real inefficiencies and delinquencies in U.S. security assistance to Ukraine, as you'd expect there would be in such a mammoth program. But these too are regularly examined by the U.S. Department of Defense's Inspector General, which marks where progress has been made on both the American and Ukrainian side. Here's a good report. It contains recommendations for further improvements in the monitoring of military assistance to Ukraine, and it does not recommend doing away with military assistance in its entirety because Ukraine isn't ready to part with enough of its natural resources. In sum, while Russia struggles with mounting losses, logistical nightmares, and an underperforming military, Ukraine continues to adapt, leveraging new technologies and international support to hold the line. The war has exposed not only the vulnerabilities of both sides, but also the broader geopolitical realities shaping Western involvement. U.S. aid to Ukraine is not the reckless cash bonfire some critics claim, but a strategic investment that, in many cases, benefits America's own defense industry. Meanwhile, concerns over corruption in Ukraine, while real, are actively addressed by Ukrainian institutions and international oversight mechanisms. The bottom line? This war is not just about territorial control. It's a stress test for democracy, global alliances, and the future of European security. And if anyone is still convinced Ukraine is a lost cause, they might want to check the math on that 83-year timeline.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.